Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for your wait and your time. It's good to see familiar faces and new faces. We're going to get to introductions. It's going to be part of the ride here that we're going to be on for 90 minutes. And we have a small group, so we're going to be pretty, it's going to be more of a dialogue. It sounds great because no one slips on a banana peel and ends up at a lecture like this. So like usually people are doing stuff. So it's really exciting. I'm hoping that we have enough time to really talk about the projects that you're doing and see if we can make them better. This workshop is happening because things don't just happen. It took me a long time as a child. I was probably until I was like 10 years old. I thought Thanksgiving just happens. Christmas just happens. You know, these things are just natural things that occur, and they're not. They're well-tuned, oiled machines of people collaborating and working together to make something happen. And the people in this room are some of the people who are making those things, whatever they are, whether it's I can't give any examples right now off the top of my head. I can't think of anything, but you're making them happen. It's not really a great start for this, is it? We're working through it. So thank you guys for all of the things that you do, because we know that you guys do a lot. This is a 90-minute workshop for people who are new to making things happen, or people who have been making things happen for a while. And we're going to be talking about specifically cultural events and how do you make cultural events succeed. And we're going to do that by considering elements of what I'm calling organized cultural participation. And we're going to really go into what that means and what that means for your specific project. We're going to look at the cycle of how people engage with things, and we're going to share tips with each other on how to do things better. So some of the things, you're going to get to know each other. Be prepared to talk to the person that may not be sitting next to you. You will be talking. We're going to be defining some different elements of what I'm calling organized cultural participation. And we're going to try to articulate the stuff that you guys are doing currently through those elements. And also we're going to work together and kind of become a peer group to think about how do we want to make our events better, and what are some places we want to move forward on improving the stuff that we're already doing. Another thing to say here is that I'm assuming everyone here knows what they're doing. I think everyone here is coming here with stuff that you guys have been doing incredible work for years. Everyone here has different talents and abilities and have been, moving things forward for however long you've been alive. This workshop isn't telling you 5 easy steps to start a project. I'm assuming that you guys are coming with your own experience. What I am saying is that we're going to be talking about it in a structured way together. And the goal of talking about it in a structured way together is for us to get on the same page and highlight places where our work is different or the same, or places where we're trying to understand what somebody's work might be doing very well that could be teaching and learning from someone else's work, even if you're doing events in a completely different area. But by all of us coming together and having a shared vocabulary of the way that we're talking about things, it's going to help us be able to swap tips and experiences as we're all creating what we're doing. So the first step with this is we need to get on the same page with each other and get to know each other. I think one of the main things that I was flustered one time planning a road trip, and I was talking to somebody in a different meeting about the frustrations of planning a road trip. And they told us planning is an act of love. And I thought that was a really kind way to think about it. Planning can feel pedantic. It can feel neurotic sometimes. It's also sometimes people do it to like stave off their own chaos. But at the end of the day, the act of you planning something is a gift of love that you're giving to yourself, you're giving to your community, you're giving to the people that you're planning for and with. And so as we're trying to make this happen, we're always trying to make it happen and respect that this is a gift that we're giving. And as you're coming here and you're coming to this event, you're also giving love to whoever you're thinking about, of like, I want to plan this thing for whatever reason. It's an act of love to think about designing and making it better. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Haley Dardar. I live in Sunset, Louisiana, and I live on the border of Sunset and Grand Coteau. I'm right on the line. I had to contact the mail postmaster when I first moved in because no one knew exactly where I lived. It was just a bean field and this big. That was a lot of another thing. But yeah, I live in Sunset. Just in a bean field in Sunset. I'm originally, my family is from the South Lafourche area, which is about an hour and a half south of New Orleans. But I moved to the Lafayette area when I was about 3 years old. Lived here most of my life. I went to LSU for undergraduate. I went for print journalism, looking at cultural heritage journalism. And then I got my master's in art, culture, and history at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And I was really looking at what's the difference between a digital documentary and online social activism when you're looking at if someone is making a click towards something. How is that act different than social activism if they're just trying to access the narrative of a documentary? And so that really got me, and other things have really got me interested in this idea of how do you plan events? Particularly, I'm interested in how you plan digital events. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But generally, how do you plan social engagements and organized participation? The places where I've done this professionally are working with the Home Language Project. I've been working on Indigenous language reconstruction for the last decade, trying to make an online. We call it cultural participation through language reclamation. So looking at how you use language as a vehicle to organize and connect people who are in diaspora within the communities. I've worked for the Louisiana Endowment for Humanities with their primetime reading program that's doing intergenerational reading circles, mostly in Louisiana, but they also have some happening in Alabama and Georgia, and I think they've branched into Mississippi too. I've worked professionally designed events for Shift Design, which was a collective out of New Orleans that looks at the GLAM spaces. So that's libraries, archives, and museums, but particularly small community-based libraries, archives, and museums, and thinking about how do you sustain these wild and sometimes obscure, collectives that are holding some of the most rich and unique information usually about a place. How do you maintain that they're able to survive and still stay within their unique funkiness in existence? So I did a lot of work with that. And then I worked for 4 years at the Smithsonian Center for Folk and Cultural Heritage, specifically working with language vitality. So helping Indigenous minoritized language groups globally think about how you focus on engagement and how do you get people to culturally participate in language reclamation and vitalization across the world in these different small communities. And now I run a project called Bovancha Public Access, which we work with Indigenous artists and thinkers. So we work with Indigenous artists and thinkers, one of them is here, to think about what is the aesthetic of Indigenous art today, and also what are the thoughts that and principles that Indigenous people would like to stuff. That's what I do professionally. These are the kinds of different things that I organize and plan and work on. A series with my friends where we get together and we play Iron Chef, and we all share a kitchen. There might be 5 people cooking at the same time, the theme and a time limit. I work on a project called Zenit, which is zine would be a very strong word to use for it. It's just a collection of people who Xerox me the art that they do, and I Xerox it back. It's a radically non-digital and error-filled process of joy and mailing. I work with Detour Field Trips, which is a company that thinks about how do we get people who've been living in Louisiana for maybe a few years, maybe 2 to 4 years, to really understand the culture and community in a deeper way, and also understand some of the systems that run this place, and try to start a dialogue of what part of these systems need to be revised or reconsidered within contemporary life. There's some other things that I do. I need to give a shout out to the Tapestry series, which is a series of discussions that happens at New News Art Collective. The first one's going to be October 19th. It's a Saturday. It's going to be happening from 2 to 4. We're going to have Diego Perez Martinez come in talking about Puerto Rican immigration and his life in Lafayette and his bachata radio station. And then it'll be a series discussing different cultures and communities across Louisiana, starting in October and going until February. So shout out to that series. So those are just, and you know, some other things like I'm trying to do a hostile takeover of my family's Thanksgiving. Yes, I like to do Thanksgiving. Don't like the way they do Thanksgiving. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit later. So that's who I am, and that's what I do. And you've seen this before, you've been in one of my presentations. It's important that we know who each other are if we're going to do dialogue and start helping each other do things. So for the next 5 to 7 minutes, we're going to do this together. I want you to turn to somebody next to you, and I want you to tell them your life story in about 2 minutes. Who you are, where you're from, how'd you end up here? Yeah, your full life story. It's hard to like think about that, but like, you know, you can start with like, call me Ishmael, or, you know, and from the beginning, take it from the top, go through it, you know, just so that we can get to know each other. And then if you have time after, which you usually don't, talk about the stuff that you're organizing or currently working on. I think we have an odd number of people here. You want to step in and be a friend? Cool. So yeah, maybe turn to people, someone who looks friendly or unfriendly, and hop at it. We're gonna switch people in about 30 seconds if you haven't already. Switching around about 30 seconds. All right, if you haven't already, need to switch around. I'm sorry. If you haven't had a chance yet, switch to the next person. Yeah, I just took this button and it asked me almost much, but it's not actually right. There's usually it's like time. You see the big edge of the card. Pretty much like motorcycle, you might go in there. Sometimes artists live through like the little part like a watercolor where you're like kind of bring in art to teach the kids. Yeah. I can go in there. So then yeah, it's like it's saying on the side of it, but it's like on the other side. Yeah. Oh, all right, we have about another 30 seconds to get back to it. We found it. There's definitely different ACE program, and then there's also just the teaching artist program, which is more. All right, wrapping it back up. Well, I hope you guys got to meet each other a little bit. What did you guys reflect on? What do y'all have in common from what you heard? What are some of the events that other people are doing?
Well, between that and but I got conversation with that patrol presentation and having our people in our community to understand who they are, from the culture. Also, we have two art education managers ready here.
Oh, nice. Congrats. Thank you for your service.
Yes, I have, and I live, for those organized exhibitions and, the health warnings, a lot of house archives. But then it happens to be there, so. It's like a mixture of visual and performance space art. Over the 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And all you do, yeah. Yes.
Congrats, yeah.
Pretty much, that's three, one other person. So. I'm on we learned.
Yeah. How long did you guys work on planning and getting it together? Wow.
Very short period of time. It's really.
That's impressive.
So it's like the last 2 months.
Like we talking about that online. We're talking about like we're starting talking about yeah. Something like that. But then like we didn't find a location. I think that's and so like before we had a location, we want so much again.
Yeah.
It was very much lost.
That's impressive to get all of that done. Yeah. Do you feel like there's like 1,000 things that you would want to do differently now that you did it once, or?
Yeah. I'm very happy. So.
Yeah.
And really just to see everyone else happy with the car was excited. Some people who would never take on us. So they're.
Wow, that's incredible.
And it's just, it's nice to be. A little more difficult to find. City that's so like, there's such good artists here, there's a huge artist community here.
Yeah.
So it's cool to like give people a platform to grow themselves.
Awesome. That's really awesome.
I think a lot of first time, like artists would never were able to show their work before,
Yeah.
like show that time. And so that was very fun.
That'd be great. And is it still up?
It,
Oh,
it was
wow.
a one night thing.
Wow.
Due to like the
Yeah.
Loud House, I guess like half of it was very performance based. But Emma and I with archives going forward, thinking more of like longer kind of install periods.
40 people, gathering 40 people in 5 months, that feels like a lot. Like 40 artists, yeah. Know what that feels like. We do that for a whole bunch of public access. It's like it's about 40 people every 2 years, and it's just, we love doing it, and we do not look forward to that part of the production line. It's like, get your stuff in, please. Just send us stuff. Yes. Well, thank you guys. It's in the right time. It's not always on the prescribed time, right? Yeah. Well, so today we're just going to kind of go through, and some of the events that you're thinking about or you have in your mind. We want to kind of go through and think about them and define some of the elements out. Just for us to, it's kind of like we're just going to be doing it in the perspective. It's kind of like a yoga class where we're moving and thinking about the organization of the thing that you plan, maybe in some different terms than what you normally use. This isn't something that you should feel like, that is, something that you need to be aligning yourself in this way. It's an exercise in deeper thinking about the way that you're doing things to describe it using these terms. You might never use these terms again, and you walk out of this class just like I don't usually do, warrior two in my daily life. But being able to do it sometimes helps me have extended mobility to think about and perceive the way that I do. So. Kind of the terms that we're using today are more terms of thinking about how would you describe something rather than trying to place it in like a taxonomy of where a penguin goes. So the words that we're going to be using today are descriptive words. We're not trying to place your item within a filing system and saying like, oh, this is the type of event that I'm trying to. This is really just thinking about how do I describe the flavors or the nuances of my event in a specific way that you may or may not use. So don't feel like you're trying to put your item in a box in the way that we're talking about. Let's hop to it. When I'm thinking about an event, whatever it is, there's usually these three items together. There are the people that are part of the event, the 40 artists that you're trying to get together. There's the concept of the event. Let's showcase art that's never been showcased before. Let's get people into this space. There's like this underlying concept that needs to be expressed. And then you have everyone's favorite, the logistics. Where is it going to be? How is it going to work? Where are people getting there? How do we get these things done? And it helps me when I'm thinking about events to spread these out into those three different areas: the people area, the idea or concept area, and the logistics area. And those kind of neatly fit together into the terms that we're going to be thinking about today: organized, cultural, participation. Organized being the logistics, cultural being the ideas, and then participation being that idea of the people, how we're engaging people together. Let me hand you guys out these sheets. I have them handy little, if you want to take one and pass it down. This is the information we're going to be going through today in a handy notebook version of this. Later in our time, probably, I say later, probably in about 10 minutes now, be prepared. I'd like for you guys to try to describe your event, and use this as a worksheet to try to describe your event. I have copies for everyone who came, with the idea that we're going to describe our event now. And then later I'm going to pass around a new copy and we're going to describe what we would like our event to be, if we can improve it. So let's start with the style of intent of organization. When we're talking about organize, we're thinking about something that's been intentionally or implicitly patterned of either an individual or a collective idea. So when we break this down, I want you to think about, is your project or thing implicit or intentional? Is it something that's like, I don't know why I do this sometimes? Something that's just like deeply down in my psyche of like, at some point in the year, I start wearing long socks. I don't know why I do it other than it's cold, or just like some fashion thing that I implicitly understand is happening, but I'm not very aware that it's happening within myself. Or is it an intention? Like, we are planning a wedding. It's going to happen on this day. It's going to happen a year from now. This is precisely what is going to happen. Another example of an implicit idea is that every time I go to my grandfather's house, well, when I went to my grandfather's house, if we had a great conversation, he would offer me frozen fish at the end of it. He didn't understand, and there's very few other places where I get offered frozen fish when you leave a place. It's kind of, a burden to track around. He brought seafood places. But it was implicit, that cultural move or that little gesture that he was doing. It wasn't something that he thought, oh, there's a definite reason of this is why. It's like, no, he's leaving, I need to get her. So think about the event that you were thinking about doing right now. Is it something that is intentional, something that has, that you guys are constructing to create an innovation within the way that you're thinking about something? Or is it a built upon something that's implicit? Like, is it a birthday party where it's like the core idea is something that you don't even think about? Like, why do we celebrate a day that's on a certificate that someone was born? That's one way to think about it. Another thing that I want you to think about is your event individually organized or collectively organized? Is it something that this is your idea, you are the person who's responsible of getting it together or pulling it together? People see this as your event that's happening. Or is it something that's happening more in a collective? You are working with a bunch of other people on the organizing side to get it done. I'm not talking about, odds are if it's an event, more than one person is coming to it. But how much is it being organized by a group versus being organized by it? Does anyone want to take a stab at talking about their activity? Of where you guys might fall on that spectrum of either of those? Yeah.
It's like, dealing with archives and Loud House, like the goal, or like, what we want at the end of the day is for it to be a collective, but what ended up happening, like, especially with this year where it's just like, I think instead of it being collective, a truly collaborative, like process. That maybe is like a 40 artists, maybe only 5 at most made the actual decisions. And it wasn't identified until way too late in the game, in my opinion. And that's something that was like brought up to the other organizers, and I was like, we need to restructure this. And I feel like for that house specifically, it would have been a bit more of a committee of artists making decisions, and maybe we have people who know how to get that decision like sit through and actually flesh it out. But yeah, it's operating more at an individual level. But I think that would be beneficial for both like that house itself and artists participating if they're on the same page and have the same contribution.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the what size is your organization going to be? The people who are putting stuff together, like you can't have 30 people in the organizing section of people, but well, you can't. I've never been in kind of that UN style project delegation section. I find 5 to 8 is the number. And if anything else gets unwieldy, and you have to start being a little bit more of an institution to get it done. But yeah, it's like what size, who are you serving versus who's, do you have a sense there? I'm putting you on the spot. Go. What do you got? No, you gotta get me.
Well, okay. The thing I'm thinking about is intentional, I guess, but it's collaborating. It's collaborative. And it's dealing with the drive as well as the Evolution Museum. But that's going to be the next year. And so we have a certain amount of time to about 4 or 5 guys. We're going to create our traditional spirit dance radio. And so we're collaborating with Evolution Museum to make that happen. Think about something like this. But this has gone underground for generations. We only have one regalia that is in existence here in Acadiana from the past. So we're revitalizing that as well. And we're gonna actually showcase in envelopes, several days in envelopes. Maybe it does happen.
How many people are working on that project? Is it something that's like an individual thing that you're doing, or is there a larger collective?
It's 4
4 or 5, yeah. Okay.
It's not 5. One guy, he's like MIT right now. So
There's always that one guy in the planning committee.
and we're like, right? Yeah. So yeah. So it's probably 4 we didn't reply. Well,
Well, thank you. Yeah. We're gonna, so that's kind of like thinking about how do you talk about how your event is organized and who's doing the logistics of it. There's some things where you feel like it needs to be an individual event, and there's some things where you need to have 40 people on the organizing committee of it. I'm not saying that there's any right or wrong, but it helps to be able to articulate where you are and where you want to be, within the way that you're organizing things. So this is my example of Zenith. It's just like this. I would describe this event as a very intentional event. We actively ask people to mail us in black and white Xeroxes of whatever they're doing. As long as it fits on a sheet of paper, we publish it. No editing happening with this scene. It's a very off the cuff, rough idea of things that we do. It's more of a mailing experiment. So it's very intentional. There's not some sort of there wasn't like an implicit cultural pattern that we were trying to create with what we were doing. It was just, it was something that, we thought it would be a cheeky, fun idea. And so we went forward with it. And it's, as always, it dreams to be a collective, but it's really more of an individual project. I think there's, I work on it, and then there's someone who probably helps half the time. It's funded by people sending in postage stamps whenever they feel like it. So people will send in, a sheet of postage stamps, and that will fund us sending out the next scene. So yeah, I would say it's a very individual but intentional work. I should have done that before I had everybody go around. We'll do that next time, because this is where we would have forgot my own slide here. So let's talk a little bit about the next kind of way to think about things. This is kind of be a little bit more dense, and like this is really hoping that it'll help us think through what we're doing. So when we say cultural, it can mean a lot of things. I think everyone has a lot of times when we say cultural, we're using it as slang for cultural heritage or some sort of like getting back to people's roots. But that's not the only culture there is. And so let's think about culture in kind of a more broader system. And it's when I think about it at that length, I think about Jan and Acadiana Acumen. They're ethnographers who work in cultural memory and the line between individual memory and collective consciousness. Really great articles if that's your jam to read on them. But they really dive into like what does it mean? What do we mean when we use the word culture, and what do we mean? So distilling some of that and a little bit of Pierre Nora, I came up with imparting information over a channel within a memory system. And we're going to go into each one of these words. So when we're talking about information, what are the different things or the information that you're trying to get across with the activity or event that you're doing? Sometimes information is that you're trying to share a lesson or a skill on like how to do things. Like you want people to understand or bring back a specific dance, or people need to learn how to weave a basket. I'm thinking about Acadiana also coming up this weekend. What are some specific information that they're trying to impart with that planning process? There's skills, there's ideals, there's values, and there's philosophies that people are trying to impart within the event. And the way that they try to do, or way that you give these like more nebulous concepts a structure, that's usually what the artifact or the item is, the way that you're interacting with people. So what it becomes a channel for you to put this forward. Sometimes people import values or lessons and skills within songs. Some people write those values, lessons, skills, philosophies, ideas in a writing. There's terraforming landscape and architecture and the use of building structures that impart value of how this land should be used, what this land is, why we're doing something in this space. On the more digital side, there's social media, thinking about how you, what channels you're using to convey the value, whether it's a cup of coffee, a puppy dog, or a better understanding of oral history materials. Also things like GitHub logs, thinking about how do you, the way that you're structuring whatever digital item that you're making, that also becomes a way to think about how you're channeling or imparting the knowledge of the values or philosophies or ideas you're trying to impart. And then, of course, there's the ye old artifacts version of a visual image that we mostly understand. Art, the word art is coming from this idea of this visual artifact. So we have, oh, this is a lot to represent, but so we have what are you trying to, the information you're trying to impart to people, and you're doing that in a particular manner or within a particular method, whether that's a dance, a song, a ritual, a book, a festival. Who are you presenting this information to? Whenever we're thinking about culture, what we're really trying to do is take advantage of memories and experiences that we didn't personally experience or be a part of, but we can learn and get value from. So it becomes a collective memory system, just in the same way that we're thinking about a hard drive full of things that might be external to the workings of a machine or a computer. In that same way, us as individuals have our own lived experience and we're doing our own little processes. And when we link into cultural heritage, or we're linking into a cultural system, we're linking into getting memory or value from memory that we may not have experienced or done personally, but we have enough shared experience to learn from someone else's use or value or things they've done. So for me, it helps a lot, instead of thinking about culture, to use, I think that a lot of times when we use the word culture, we're either using it to mean cultural heritage, or we're using it as a substitute for the idea of a memory system or a collective memory system. I have a collective memory within my family. The way that I interact or we share information that I have with my family is very different than the way that I share information within my collective professional memory system. The way that I share information or the way that I interact with my peers is very different than the way that I interact with, people who might share a local geography. So that's something to keep in mind, is also what memory system are you trying to connect and have this event be a part of? What group is being represented or participating in this event? So I want to talk about, I'm going to give an example of how I talk about the indigenous Gulf Stream within those three areas. And then we're going to have a second to settle on that, or if you'll have any questions. I feel like I rambled a bit on that, and I'm realizing that might not be clear. So if there's any clarifying questions or any way to talk with that, that'd be great. And then we're going to try to do it ourselves and talk about the process. So when we're talking about the indigenous Gulf Stream, it's a 24-hour media biennial that we do biennial, obviously. It's 24 hours. It's with indigenous media and content makers across the Gulf South. And the idea that we're trying to impart an idea, and that idea is that indigenous people are contemporary. Indigenous existence is contemporary within the Gulf South. Is the main idea that we're trying to push and say that people are existing. They're forming and shaping new aesthetics. They're creating new value systems, and we're here showing and displaying that still exists, and people are still. But the channel that we use for that event is a new media, like a Twitch stream, essentially. We chose that particular medium because it's something that we know everyone can have access to, no matter if they're in the area or not. And it just cuts down the logistics of trying to do a physical in-person event, particularly because people are so disparate. And the idea of coming and coalescing together wasn't necessarily as important as getting word out. So we wanted to focus on the art rather than focus on the physical space. And so that's why we decided to make it a stream as the best way, best channel to get that particular idea of contemporary Indigenous existence out. The memory group that this is working with is really working with the Indigenous community of the Gulf South. So we're really looking at interacting and putting this material in a way that it's imparting something to that group of people that these, you know, it's kind of a self-reflective event. Does anyone else have any clarifying questions or want to take a stab at this? Doesn't have to be a good stab.
Project.
Yeah,
Working on this mention.
yeah. Like, what are the values? Like, what value are you trying to get across by even doing whatever you're doing?
Okay, so the value of the hashchip, that's the main language. Hashchip is a spirit dance, and the hashchip are the spiritual beings that help the Shanesha people in the past. So it's kind of like with Jesus and all this stuff. But it's our version, our story of how people came to be. And so we continue to have our own belief system in spirit. And that's what it's there to part. Also, Hashkid, in Acadian Creole culture, the Hashkid is I like to say it rubbed off on Acadian Creole culture because people do the Mardi Gras. And when you see the Hashkid, you'll notice that. Because they used to call Hashkid Mardi Gras back then in the past. And around Fairmont and too. But then they began to persecute the dancers and those who would mask. And I actually began to arrest people as well. But so that's how it went underground. But then, lo and behold, it's like, you know, people in the country areas of Lafayette, St. Martin Parish, other places, they're dressing up like hooded.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how you know,
Connected to that.
how that happens. And you know, it's like, well, okay, we can be mimicked, but we can't, you know, do our own. That's what this is about. And it's to bring or revive our hashchi and to show that we still remember our ways and that our ways are still valid.
Yeah.
And still alive, and that it's the precursor to what is celebrated now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
People dress up as morning.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay,
So that makes sense. So it's like the way that I would kind of describe it in this terms is like you're doing this this cultural ritual that's, you know, you're imparting this, the information is essentially spiritual of nature. And the channel that you're using for that is this costume and this dance. And the memory system that it's connected into is the Kanashi memory system. Does anybody else have memory system or something they want to try?
Okay. When I.
Oh, you gotta pass the mic.
I could think the mic guy. That's like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because, I don't know, like.
Okay.
When I started like conceptualizing archives, I think the original thing that I wanted to part with our community was that like collaboration will always be rewarded, and the more like, input you get and the more community that is around your craft, even if you need, of course, those moments of solitude to create work, I think brings a different level of, I don't know, feeling and emotion and something else to the work that is harder to find, and to show the community that like there's enough validation and recognition and enough people and attention for everyone to make a name for themselves.